Hello, welcome to the first class of HSM375. And in this class, this module will be talking about oral academic citation. Now, this might be new to some of you, or this is a practice or a concept that you've come across before. But whether you're, in the later or in the former group, I do. Invite you guys to engage with this, and hopefully there is some new information that you'll be getting out of this. And the reason I'm starting this course with this is because all your assignments are going to require you guys to do oral citation, and I wanted to kind of show you guys, give you some background information and some kind of coaching on how to do that, so that you're able to do that well when it's time to submit your assignment. So there are three learning objectives for this module. We are going to, the first objective is to identify the basics of searching for academic literature, identifying databases that you could use, and identifying key elements to orally citing academic evidence. So, starting with objective one, we have kind of have to answer the question is, why are we citing? Why is it important to cite? So thing to know is that academic writing is structured. This means we do not wing it here. You have to be very structured in the way that you are writing, when you're writing academically or when you're doing academic speeches. And part of the structure is that you need to cite your evidence. You need to cite the source of your information, any information that is going to be part of your writing, that is going to be part of your speech, is being sourced from somewhere. And so you need to appropriately and adequately cite the source of that information. So we don't wing it here. We kind of get everything planned and well written and rehearsed and, edited to get into a good point. So in academic writing as well as academic speech, everything you say should be backed up by science, and also one of the reasons that we need to cite, like specifically cite the source of your science, is because it tells us, it helps us to know whether you know what you say that you know, because I have found sometimes students will say, papers say or research says. Just when you have such an open-ended research says, it doesn't give us the opportunity to actually assess what that research is. Who is the person who did the research? When was the research done, and stuff like that. But when you clearly identify the research you're talking about, it gives us the opportunity to actually review that your source of information. And this is because if the source of your information is questionable, it means that your knowledge is questionable. So we need to know just how credible your information is, or how credible your knowledge is. That's the reason why the sources of your science needs to be specifically cited. And but we also know that with science, new knowledge, is built on old knowledge. So when you're citing, it helps us in knowing where your science is at, in terms of knowing how accurate or how current the your science is, or how relevant your science is, because while we understand that new knowledge is built up from old knowledge, we also want to know from where did we arrive at where we are. So, and that helps us when we have the citation provided. So why do you need academic journals to source your information from? One thing is that academic journals or the papers that are published in academic journals are evidence based. That's the assumption that we go with, that they are evidence based. And the reason why we say it's evidence based is because of the assumption of rigor. And this is because of the way that academic papers or academic articles are published. They go through peer review process, whereby there is the rigor that comes in doing that. The people who are reviewing the paper are looking for, trying to see whether bad science has been, done, and whether there has been some unscrupulous practices by the researchers or something like that. So that whole peer review process brings a rigor to it, and this is because the peer review process, there's kind of a standardization of how this is done in terms of what are reviewers looking for when they are reviewing a paper. What qualifies as bad science, and what is an acceptable practice in terms of science. So that means that um, presumptuously, or we go with the assumption that the paper that passes through peer review process and does get published has gone through the ringer, and what we get is good science. So that is the assumption that we get when we have articles that then make it to the academic journals, which makes those information a lot more credible than using, for example, you know picking information from a blog and stuff like that. So that's the reason why. So does that mean that you should only cite sources from academic journals? Not necessarily. There's a lot of information that can come from government agencies or professional associations. For example, American Association of Dentists. I think that's what it's called. Or I think there's also American Medical Association or something like that. So there are a number of professional associations, and then of course you have the government agencies. You have the Department of Health. So there are a lot of information that come from there, and we work with the premise that those information are based off on science. With that being, there's a lot of expert knowledge that goes into the information that makes it into these places, and experts' knowledge does bear weight. You don't just wake up in the morning and become an expert on a subject. It takes time, and a lot of the time, you have a mountain of publications or academic publications under your belt, and has held very, position good positions or top position leadership positions that have you have taken the time to build a reputation and build credibility before it gets to the point whereby the information that a government agency puts out or a professional association puts out, becomes, bears weight. It's not just the same thing as just writing a medium piece or something like that. So that is the reason. But however, academic journals are preferable, at least for me. For me, the reason I say it's preferable is because, for the most part, they provide a much broader and a wider range of information. Uh, for someone who is a beginner researcher in terms of trying to find information on, find academic articles, I always lean towards getting people to kind of master what it is like to look for paper in academic journals, because there's a broad and wide range of information, whereby you can get quite a lot of things that you want, as against going to government websites or stuff. They're a little more complicated to get information out of, and you may need to be a lot more precise when you're getting information. In a nutshell, it's a lot more information in academic journals than websites, and information is easier to find, and most importantly, particularly for the purpose of citation, they are a lot easier to cite because the citation suggestions are often provided so that you as a student is not having to come up with the way that the citation needs to be done because you see the citation suggestion is often provided. So we now get into talking about journal databases. We have a couple. I lean towards using PubMed and Google Scholar. There's another one called Ovid. There's quite a lot of journal databases that are available, but PubMed and Google Scholar, is quite very popular in terms of this the way that you use them in searching to get your article are quite easy, relatively easy to find. So that is why it's quite popular. But university libraries provide journal databases as well. For instance, the SLU library does have the Sims library, that has a database of journals. And if you intend to use a slow library, I would suggest using the ask a librarian function or scheduling a consultation in order to go through how to use it and kind of put you through. It's always very useful knowledge to gain, and I always advise that you make use of all the resources that are available to you, and that includes this. So, what then do you do when you are, when it's time to look for academic paper in journal articles? You want to begin with, coming up with a research question. So, what research questions are is what it basically is in a nutshell is it helps you in focusing, and in kind of summarizing or drilling down to what the primary thing your research wants to learn. Some topics may be very broad, such that if you want to start searching for information on it, it may take you a lot of time. So coming up with a research question helps you in narrowing what your search is. Let me use, for example, let's say a topic says what is how was I'm using this as an example. How was Obamacare implemented in Louisiana? That's a very broad topic that you could go. What the research question does for you is that it will help you narrow down what it is that you want to say. Your research question could focus on, how was Obamacare implemented for children. So that's when, if you pick that research question, you still fall under that broad topic. But what you have now done is that you've narrowed it down. You're still within the whole topic, but you've kind of narrowed it down. It's a lot easier to look for articles that is focusing on that than one that is very broad. Because with the very broad topic, there's so many directions you can go, and some of the times it may be too overwhelming that you will not be able to, do a good job out of it. Or in order for you to do a good job out of it, you may need to invest a lot of time, which you may not have. So that's what a research question does for you. It helps narrow it down and makes it a lot easier to get done. So this is to say that when you have a research question and you have your database search, what you come up with, you have a preliminary working list of papers that you can now review. So instead of, let's use, for example, dealing with 100 papers, your research question and your database search may get you down to, let's say, 5 papers, which you can now review. It's a whole lot more easier to handle 5 papers than to handle 100 papers. That's what I mean. So, when it comes to searching and selecting papers, you need to prepare your database by deciding the topic or position you want to take. Say it's in a debate. Your topic helps you in coming up with a research question, right? Sometimes, if the topic has been provided, you can work off that topic. If a topic has not been provided, you can, come up with your own topic. And by coming up with your own topic, you then come up with your research question. Your research question and your topic go hand in hand, meaning that you can work from research question into topic. You can also work from topic into research question, but there are things that you have to, come up with. Taking a position in a case of a debate also does help you carve out what your research question is. So all of this is very important to have. And then you then have to skim through the database. Do try to skim through as many databases as possible, but of course that depends on how much time you have to do the work that you need to do. And then after you skim through the database and you have your preliminary list of papers, you have to kind of scan through the papers. And when you're scanning through the papers, what you're doing during the scan is to select the papers that most align with your research question, so that you're not spending your time having a whole bunch of papers that are not going to do much for you in terms of the work that you need to do. So that is what has to happen. And what you then use is the information inside those papers. You use it to outline your speech. So that is how that goes. So, with objective three, we are going to talk about citing in a speech. So, when you're citing in a speech, your intention is to convey that the information you have is reliable, is valid, and it's credible, right? Because in an academic speech, or in a science conversations, you want to provide, credibility is very important, reliability is very important, validity is very important, because we don't want people just coming out from the woodworks and making all kinds of statements that doesn't have any backing, or so that is what citation does for you. It kind of separates you from people who are just talking versus people who know what they're talking about. So it then makes your audience know that you have researched this topic, right? You're prepared. You didn't just, roll out of bed and start talking about something you don't know about. It says, I am well versed in this topic. I've put in time and efforts to understand it, and therefore, I reasonably understand what it is that I'm doing. And that is why you do not wing your oral citation. You have to prepare your oral citation in much the same manner as you prepare your essay. Your essay goes through drafts and goes through rewrite and editing before you now have the final thing that you submit. So does your oral speech, that includes your citation. You don't just wing it, you have it all prepared. So that's something that is very important to note. So if you don't cite the information in your speech, it's considered that you have plagiarized those information. So this means that just because you included a citation in your bibliography or in the reference list, it doesn't mean that the things that you said that came out of your mouth, that list that you have takes serve the purpose of the oral citation. It doesn't. You have to do both. You have to cite your sources in your speech, as well as provide your sources. So both of them has to be there. You would find that in your exam, in your assignment, sorry, I will require you guys to both cite in your speech as well as provide the source of your information in your submission. So both of them have to be there. Just to understand why you have to do both. So if your information is coming from a source, you must cite the source. So I say this in order, just in case anybody is wondering, oh, so how do I know what I should cite and what I shouldn't cite? The golden rule is, did this information come out of your head? No. If it didn't come out of your head, if it came out from a paper, from a speech, from anything, if this information was not 100% generated from you, you need to cite the source where it came from, which means that whether you are paraphrasing that information or you are directly quoting the source, you have to cite it. So saying, oh, I'm not quoting it, so I don't need to cite it. Nope. Even if you're paraphrasing, you still have to cite your source. So this is an example of oral citation that's been written out. So what this does is this includes a quotation. This citation, it includes a quotation, and it includes a number of information in this citation. One of the examples is including the publication date. That's November 2020. Is including the name of the journal, Journal of Experimental Social Psychology. It includes the name of the author, and also it also does include a few more information about the author in terms of what he, his job title and this in the school where he works or his employers. So it does include that. Now, you in your oral citation, you may not want to include those extra information about the author, but you want to have the publication date, the name of the journal, the name of the author, the name of the title of the paper. Those are the information you want to get in your citation. And the second citation also has publication date, name of journal. Then in this case, it included both the name of the association and name of the author in this case. So that's two ways you could do your citation. One thing that neither of these citations in this example did was they did not include the title of the paper. Including the title of a paper is always a good idea, to put when you're doing your oral citation, so that you guys are aware of that. So when you're drafting your speech, you come up with your topic, right? And like I said, your topic and your research question goes hand in hand. And in this case, your topic says, how does the healthcare system in the United States compare to the healthcare system in other countries? So think of your speech as an oral essay, right? If you're writing an essay, you will stay within scope, meaning you are going to restrict your essay on talking about the healthcare system. You are going to also only compare the countries within, compare healthcare systems across countries rather than just talking about healthcare systems within the US. Because if you do that, you have gone out of scope with the topic. So you want to kind of stick within the room that the topic has provided you. This is how it is with speeches, your oral speeches as well. You have to stay within the confines of your topic, or in the case of the assignments, that you will have your instructions and you have your prompts. You need to stay within the confines of those instructions and those prompts, because if you do anything outside that, you have gone out of scope. And you don't want to do that, because if you do, your speech starts looking very disorganized, and you don't want to do that. You want to kind of have it look very organized. And at the end of the day, what you want to communicate is that you're somebody who knows what she's talking about, or he's talking about, or they're talking about. So how do you do oral citation in this course? So one of the things I would suggest is that in your introduction, you set the scene, right? And in setting the scene, what you're doing is you're providing a general overview of the topic. That's when you tell us what this topic is about. For instance, in the example I put, it says, compare healthcare system in the US and other countries. This is where you may talk about healthcare system in general, whether in the US or other countries, before you then go back, drill into it and really talking about the different elements of the system. So in your introduction, you are giving a general overview, and this is where a lot of your citation is going to come in. The reason why a lot of your citation is going to come in here is because the body of your speech, of your oral citation, this is where you're going to now talk about the research finding. For this course, which is we are focusing on data, the data, in this case, is going to mostly be in graphical representation of the data in terms of whether bar chart or pie chart and all of those. This is where you discuss that data. You now break the data down, really explain it so that someone who is not looking at the date at the graphs or the tables, they understand what they are saying. So this is where this is what what your body is, what the body of your speech is, and then in your conclusion, you summarize the data. And in terms of, when I say summarize the data, I mean, what does that mean? I'm going to use an example. Let's say your data says that there are more African Americans that are diagnosed with diabetes. The question is, what does that mean for the health of African Americans? That's what your conclusion should be looking at. Talking about what does that mean, and for the most part, the information of what the data means are usually provided in the paper that you got that data from. For example, if you get this if you get your pie chart or your bar chart, or even your line charts that are providing information about healthcare or health statuses, you are going to find in the same paper them trying to talk about what that means, because that's typically what how these papers go. So you have to kind of dig in a little bit deep into the paper to find those what does that mean answers. That's what I mean. And but do remember, very very important is that when you are starting to cite, and it takes a while before most people are not born orators, they're not natural orators. You may want to kind of train that muscle a little bit. So the first few times you are going to be doing your oral argument on your oral citation, expect that you will be reading off a script for now until you get into the point where it becomes second nature to you, which means that your script needs to have everything planned out in terms of setting the scene. You're setting the scene, you have your what your research findings are, the graphical representation, and then you have your conclusion of what those means, particularly the parts of your speech that is going to require that's going to have you do the citations. You are going to need to plan that out and write that out so that you are able to adequately cite, because otherwise you will not be able to do a good job with the citation. So I would always advise, please have your speech planned out, have all your citations appropriately plugged into places before you do the video submission. It's always a very good thing to do. And finally, you go do your practice. Before you submit, take a few practices before you submit, so that you're kind of in the zone of things. I hope this is helpful to you. Do have a lovely day. Bye.